Hi, today I'm going to show you how you can make this cheeky cake for that special person in your life, ideal for Valentine's Day or maybe a birthday. I've baked an 8-inch Madeira cake in a heart-shaped tin, and I've also baked 2 in these round tins, which is the ball mould by Silverwood, which makes Christmas puddings, but it's also good for cakes. And I'm always really nervous about my batter sticking in these moulds, so I always place 2 strips just inside. So what we need to do to prepare our cakes is obviously remove all your baking paper. Now I'm going to use the cake leveler because this is going to give me a really straight and even cake. So I've already set it halfway down on my sponge. So just slice that along. And then I'm going to do exactly the same with the top of the cake. So I'm just going to discard that to one side. Doesn't work so well with the rounded mould, so I'm just going to try to cut off the uneven top of both. As straight as I can get them. So you want them to be the same in height, so I'm just going to take a bit more off of this one, and that's about right. So let's pop that to one side. So we're going to put some buttercream in the middle. Now you can make your own buttercream, or I will confess I'm actually cheating today. This is a pre-made vanilla frosting. And actually a handy hint before I start, I'm just going to turn my heart upside down because it just makes it easier to spread your buttercream in the middle. If you've got jam, you might want to put some jam in it as well. If you had a lemon cake, you might want to add some nice lemon curd. Gives it that extra punchy flavour. So you don't want to overdo it with the centre, because this is often when people cover a cake, they say that it bulges on the side. So you want to keep it just within the edge of the cake. So we're now going to pop on top very carefully. Now we want to put these on the top. So I still think personally they look too large. It depends how you want them to be. But I'm just going to cut a little bit more. These really did dome when I cooked them. I probably put slightly too much mixture. When I filled these up, I actually filled them 3/4 of a way, but maybe I'd say probably halfway. So that's about perfect. So I'm just going to stick those on the top. Just going to add a bit of buttercream, and again you could add some jam to the top as well. And now we're ready to cover the whole thing in buttercream so that we can cover it in sugar paste. So you can see I've got it on a single thick card. This just makes it easier to move it around on the surface. I finished buttercreaming my cake, and what a mess I was making. So I've had a bit of a clear up, and I just wanted to show you how I've buttercreamed around these gaps. So make sure you get enough buttercream in around here so that when you cover it, it's going to cover really, really well. And you can see that my cake was very crumbly, so a lot of my crumble has gone into my cake. So with my buttercream, I wanted it to be quite soft, so I added a tiny bit of cool boiled water, or you could put it in the microwave or a mixer, just so that you've got a very soft buttercream when you're coating the cake. But don't worry too much about what that looks like. It purely is for the sugar paste to stick to the cake. So now we're going to put our cake onto our board. So I've got a nice bright red 12-inch round cake drum, and I'm just going to use my large palette knife here, and I'm just going to pick it up and pop it on to my board. Ooh. There we go. So if your buttercream moves slightly, you can just pop it back on. But like I said, don't worry too much about that, because it's more for your sugar paste to stick onto the cake. So I'm using a nude peach sugar paste, and this is by Satina. You can choose whatever colour you want to use. So I'm going to start by kneading my sugar paste. So I'm going to use some icing sugar just so that it doesn't stick to my surface. Cover my hand slightly as well. So always give your sugar paste a really good knead. You want it nice and soft, and you want it nice and warm at room temperature. If it feels cold, then it's not ready to roll out. Now mine feels quite warm. I've already given it a little bit of a knead before. So to roll it out, cover the surface with icing sugar. And I've got a 16-inch rolling pin. So you want to keep turning it. I'm almost there with rolling the sugar paste out. Now the way I can tell whether I've rolled it large enough is I usually get my rolling pin and I just roll it over, and I can see roughly how long I need to roll that out, and I would say it's about the length of my rolling pin. So before I put that onto the cake, I'm going to give it a smooth. And then we're going to lift it up with both our hands and place it over the top. Now don't lift it with the rolling pin, because what happens is the sugar paste stretches, and that's often when you get the cracking around the edges. So now we're just going to smooth it over using our hands. You can see I've accidentally stuck my nail in here, but I'm not going to worry too much because I'm going to put the pattern where that is. There we go. So now using a palette knife, it's best if you take away the excess first. And then you can start to cut away at the base and then just smooth it along with your knife. There we go. And you can just use your hands then just to smooth all the way around the base. Okay. And now we're ready to start decorating. Now I'm ready to crimp the Basque shape onto my cake. So I'm using this large serrated crimper, which is a closed curve. Now you can see it has the band around it. Now this moves up and down, and this just gives you a level of control. So I like to have mine quite near, over halfway down. Otherwise you get a bigger shape, and the best thing to do is probably to practice on a little bit of sugar paste before you actually do it on the cake, just to get an idea of how you want it to look and the feel of using the crimper. So I'm going to start off along the top of the Basque, and I want my curves to be raised that way. So make sure you think about that before you do your first crimp. So I'm going to start in the middle. So you're just pushing it in slightly, and then you squeeze it together, and then next one along and squeeze it together, and then move it and squeeze it in. So make sure you press it evenly into the sugar paste to begin with. And now I'm going to go the other side. You can see my paste is a bit sticky, so I'm just going to bring the band up just a little bit. So I'm going to do that one again. Try and do it in a straight line. And now I'm going to come along the bottom. So I want my curves to be upwards. So make sure you've got the crimper the right way before you start. So you can see I'm pressing it in, squeeze it together, release and pull away. Make sure you release before you pull it away. Now we're ready. Now we're ready for the piping. We're now going to pipe our cornelli lace design all over the top of our Basque. So I've prepared some royal icing, which I've coloured with some licorice sugar flare paste colour. Now it's very important with royal icing to get rid of as many air bubbles as you can. So if you pop it onto the work surface, then using your palette knife, paddle it backwards and forwards, and you'll see all the pockets of air just bursting. I'm using a number 2 PME piping nozzle, so I'm just going to snip off a tiny bit at the end of my bag, and I'm going to pop that in there. I would suggest a number 2 or a 1.5 would be absolutely fine. So we're now just going to fill the piping bag. This is a medium grease-proof piping bag. You don't want to overfill a piping bag. Okay, that's probably enough. And then just fold the top, fold the sides in. Very slowly start to push the ice into the bottom of your tube, and you can see it's coming out. So now we're ready to start. I'm going to show you how the technique works for cornelli on the back of a board to begin with. Never pipe straight onto the cake, just in case your piping bag isn't working properly, but you want to get used to doing the pattern before you pipe it. So with cornelli, it's basically W and M shapes. And you just randomly do that shape. And what you want to try to do is do the whole pattern without finishing. So you can stop and have a break and move the cake, but the idea is that this pattern will continue to cover the whole of the cake. And always start with a very clean nozzle, so have a bit of kitchen paper beside you to keep wiping the nozzle. So let's have a go on the cake. I'm going to start by piping the cornelli from the bottom corner here, and the way I do it is continue the pattern all the way round the edge of the whole shape, and then I start to fill it in. I've got this lovely lace ribbon here to go round the edge of my cake. So I'm going to turn that around. And we want a slight overlap. So I'm going to cut it here. And I'm going to use some royal icing just to stick my lace down. This is just a white royal icing, it really won't show through. So I'm going to pop a little bit of royal icing . And then what you want to do is you want to make sure this has got a wire going through. So just use your hand to smooth it all the way round. I've still got too much overlap there. And I'm just going to add a tiny, very tiny bit of royal icing. Need to push that down a bit. Just hold it for a few seconds. it back around. So you've got that nice lacy, delicate finish. And then I'm going to add some ribbon bows to my design. So I've just got 3mm bright red ribbon. So I'm just going to tie a very simple, she says, a very simple bow. We just cut a slight angle. So you want to make 3 or 4 little bows like that. Now what I'd normally do is let the royal icing set before I start to stick the bows on, but obviously for this video you don't want to wait an hour for my icing to set, so we're going to have a go at just sticking them on while it's wet. So it's a bit experimental. Normally I'd use a tiny bit of royal icing, just pop a tiny bit onto the bow to stick it on. So to get it into the middle, I'm just going to hold it all up and just very carefully place it in the middle. Oh, that's worked. And then we're going to put one slightly further down. I'm going to hold them all up because I'm worried they're going to get covered in black. That's working quite well. And then another one. And you could just leave it at 3. I think sometimes uneven numbers are better than even numbers. And there you have your finished lacy Basque cake.